Good evening and welcome to World in Focus. Tonight, we take you across a rapidly shifting global landscape where diplomacy is hardening in Eastern Europe. Political tensions are spilling onto the streets in Australia. India is deepening strategic ties in the Gulf, and in Washington, a presidential address has raised as many questions as it answered. Let's begin with the top headlines of the day. Russian President Vladimir Putin has made it clear he is unwilling to compromise on his demands in Ukraine, even as US President Donald Trump intensifies efforts to push both sides toward a peace deal. In a combative speech, Putin rejected calls to cede ground diplomatically, insisting that Russia would take territory by force if necessary. He also lashed out at Ukraine's European allies, accusing them of prolonging the conflict. The remarks come at a moment of frantic behind-the-scenes diplomacy involving Washington and European capitals. But Putin's tone suggested Moscow sees little incentive to soften its position, raising fresh doubts about whether meaningful negotiations are even possible in the near term. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced a crackdown on hate speech following a mass shooting at Bondi Beach that targeted a Jewish festival. 15 people were killed when gunmen opened fire during a Hanukkah event, sending shockwaves across the country and sparking urgent calls for action. Speaking in Canberra, Albanese said new laws would focus on those who spread hate, division, and radicalization. The move reflects growing concern among Australian authorities about extremist rhetoric translating into real-world violence and signals a tougher stance on online and offline incitement. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has concluded his visit to Oman, marking the final leg of a three-nation tour. He was formally received with a guard of honor and held extensive talks with Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, covering trade, investment, energy cooperation, defense, security, technology, agriculture, and cultural exchange. The visit holds added significance as India and Oman mark 70 years of diplomatic relations following the Omani Sultan's state visit to India last year. It underscores New Delhi's growing focus on the Gulf as a strategic partner, economically, diplomatically, and in terms of regional stability. And finally tonight, we turn to the United States and presidential address that may have offered a glimpse into the political battle ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. President Donald Trump used a nationally televised address from the White House to frame his first year back in office as a story of recovery and momentum, even as economic anxieties persist and his party faces a critical electoral test. Delivered just days before Christmas, the 20-minute speech carried a distinctly combative tone. Trump avoided several major foreign policy crises and instead focused heavily on defending his economic record, while placing blame squarely on his predecessor, Joe Biden. "I inherited a mess and I am fixing it," Trump said, a line that set the theme for the address. Rising living costs, healthcare pressures, crime, and immigration were all attributed to the previous administration. Trump insisted inflation is easing, incomes are rising, and investment is flowing into the US. He pointed to charts to support his claims and repeated that global leaders see America as the world's most attractive destination for capital. But publicly available data paints a more complicated picture. Inflation has begun ticking higher again, now running at around 3% annually. Since Trump announced new import tariffs earlier this year, job growth has slowed and unemployment has risen from 4% in January to 4.6%. While stock markets have gained and gasoline prices have fallen, surveys suggest these positives have not translated into broad public confidence. Trump also addressed healthcare, blaming Democrats for looming insurance premium hikes, as Affordable Care Act subsidies are set to expire. Rather than backing legislative fixes, he suggested sending payments directly to consumers. The only concrete policy announcement came near the end of the speech when Trump revealed a one-time payment of $1,776 to active duty military personnel, a warrior dividend, tied symbolically to the upcoming 250th anniversary of American independence. Visually, the address was tagged in the White House's diplomatic reception room, framed by US flags and Christmas decor. But the tone was far from festive. Trump largely avoided calls for unity, revisited cultural grievances, criticized immigration, and made remarks about Somali immigrants in Minnesota, echoing rhetoric familiar from his campaign rallies. Notably absent was any detailed discussion of foreign policy, despite recent escalations involving Venezuela and other global flashpoints. References to international affairs were brief, reinforcing advisors' concerns that voters remain far more focused on domestic costs and economic pressure. As the camera stopped rolling, Trump reportedly sought immediate feedback from aides, a reminder that with midterms approaching, every appearance now carries political weight. That's all in World in Focus for today. Follow the Finance 360 for more updates.